competitive landscape of South African business, from the tech hubs of Sandton to the creative firms of Cape Town, there's a common frustration among executives. You've invested in the workshops, you've checked the seater alignment boxes, and you've spent the budget. Yet when you look closely at your teams, performance is still wildly inconsistent. It isn't just a case of one department winning and another failing. The real damage is happening within the teams themselves. In the same office, you have the high-performance heroes who are drowning in burnout because they're carrying the weight of the entire unit, sitting right next to the people who have mastered the art of country club behavior, doing just enough to avoid the radar. At Inspired Leadership, we've spent 20 years facilitating growth for big organizations like IBM and Coca-Cola and small organizations of 30 and 50 people. And we've seen this performance lottery play out time and time again. If you want consistent performance, you can't offer inconsistent, misaligned, and unsustainable training events. When you do this, you're treating leadership development like putting a plaster on someone with the flu. It looks effective. It feels like you've done something in the vicinity of medical care, but it won't cure the patient. And it won't prevent the flu in the future, and it definitely won't stop it from spreading through the rest of your team. The flu in your organization is accountability paralysis. And a one-day leadership workshop last quarter is just a plaster on a systemic infection. In my previous video, we talked about the specialist trap, how we take a brilliant expert like Arno and promote him into a role he isn't prepared for. But here is where that trap becomes a catastrophe. That newly promoted specialist is already ill-equipped for the people side of the job. They are then dropped into this modern, toxic landscape where they have to tiptoe around every conversation because they don't have the leadership tools to navigate this eggshell culture that we're all living in. They default to what they do know, the technical work. And the result is the creation of the indispensable specialist. But here is the irony. That indispensable specialist is now the manager. Because the manager is terrified of being labeled toxic or unsupportive for holding someone accountable, they stop being a leader and start being a rescuer or an enabler. When a team member uses burnout as a shield to avoid a deadline, or when an undercompetent appointee fails to deliver, the manager doesn't coach, they compensate. They think, it's faster if I do it myself, or I don't want to face an HR drawn-out performance conversation right now. I just don't have the energy. So if the manager stays late, the manager fixes the code, the manager handles the client crisis, they are working 14 hours a day just to keep the lights on. They aren't leading because leadership requires the space to observe, the quiet to listen, the courage to challenge. And they have none of that. They're too busy being the hero who is actually the bottleneck. We keep trying to fix this with events. We hope that a 3-day workshop will magically turn a rescuer into a leader. But leadership isn't learnt in an event. It's an infrastructure. If your leadership is inconsistent, it's because you've made leadership a role that only belongs to the person with the title. You've created a push system where HR is pushing training onto managers instead of a pull system where the entire organization is pulled towards a common set of behaviors. Our answer to this isn't more manager training. It's a system of leadership that starts from the most junior employee and threads all the way to the CEO. Leadership is not a rank, it's a set of behaviors, and it starts with leading yourself. Imagine a workplace where a junior intern doesn't wait for feedback, they ask for it. Where, instead of complaining about a problem in a toxic whisper, they ask, what can I say or do right now to change this situation? When you empower people at all levels to focus on what they can control, their thoughts, their words, and their actions, you stop the accountability paralysis and you create a culture where feedback is a gift, not a threat. That is how you get consistency, by making leadership the plumbing of the company, not just a badge on a door. The hard truth for senior executives is this: you cannot have consistent results from an inconsistent engine. If you are rewarding the loud firefighters who do everyone's job, you are unintentionally subsidizing the dysfunction. It's time to stop the microwave approach to training. We've all seen it. An organization realizes they have a performance crisis or a culture problem, so they order a leadership workshop. They want a quick fix. They want to take a group of managers, put them in a room for 8 hours or maybe 2 days even, and ping, the timer goes off and they have them come out fully cooked, emotionally intelligent, highly effective leaders. But leadership isn't a frozen meal. It isn't something you can zap into existence with a high-intensity, short-duration burst of content. It doesn't work like that. When you use the microwave approach, 3 things happen. You create surface heat. Just like a microwave meal, the training feels hot on the outside for about 48 hours. People are all inspired and motivated. They have the goodie bag and the fresh notes. But the center, the actual habits and mindsets, stay frozen. Within a week, the warmth has evaporated and everyone has reverted to their old, comfortable patterns. Or it ignores the soil. You can't force ripen a leader if the environment they're returning to is stagnant or unconducive to their new behaviors. The microwave approach ignores the leadership infrastructure. It treats the individual in isolation rather than acknowledging that they're part of a system that either supports or sabotages their growth. And it's not sustainable. You cannot cram for leadership. Leadership is a craft. It's a slow cook process. It requires seasoning, time, and consistent heat. It requires a journey, not an event. If you want to see where the gaps are in your own leadership infrastructure, I want you to take our Leadership Leverage scorecard. It's a diagnostic tool that looks past the happy sheets of training events and identifies exactly where your accountability is breaking down. The link is in the description. So let's stop talking about toxic workplaces and start building intentional ones. I'm Angela de Longchamps. I'm the founder and the CEO of Inspired Leadership. And I'll see you in the next video.